so much for being with us. We are excited to talk today and get some insights and perspective from you on the wide and varied landscape of the private sector and chaplaincy, and how spiritual care shows up in business and commercial settings and manufacturing. And so tell us your title and the contexts you're coming from, that you've been in for decades.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Katie, for the opportunity to share this part of my journey. So currently, I am retired. So I've retired as an Army chaplain. I was recalled back to active duty for a period of time. And when I left the Army again, I became acquainted with hospice chaplaincy, and then later with industrial or corporate chaplaincy. So in April, the end of April, I retired from Tyson Foods as their director of chaplain services, where Tyson has about 100 chaplain positions spread across, I'd say, 25 states.
What are the top things that you think, when you think of all the hiring you've done, specific to the commercial sector, to the private sector, however you want to name that? What are the top things that you'd suggest are most important for people thinking about designing training within seminaries, theological education, and formational contexts? Give a little sketch of just this world of corporate chaplaincy, private sector business chaplaincy. Does it tend to be full-time, part-time? It can feel like just sort of the Wild West for when you have those of us who are really just acquainted with, say, correctional facilities or hospital contexts, et cetera.
Well, I can speak for Tyson, right? So they had both full-time and part-time chaplains. It was about 50-50. Whether one was full-time or part-time generally depended on the size of the plant. We started out advising folks that if they were going to start a chaplain program, to look at the number of employees that they had and figure about 3 hours per week per 100 people. So if you had a plant that was 700 or 800 people, you would say 21 to 24 hours a week for that chaplain. Now, here's the great part. Once the plant got used to having a chaplain there and saw all the things that chaplain could do in helping management with absenteeism, and what we would call presenteeism, where you're there, but your head's not there. You're distracted because of a life circumstance. And so that becomes then secondarily perhaps a safety issue. So once everybody gets used to the chaplain being there and what they can do to help in times of life, death, crisis, trauma, whatever, it's amazing to me that it doesn't take long before they say, well, we know our chaplain, is doing 24 hours, but could we make them full time? And it's not long before that happens usually.
That's very helpful. Could you talk about it's to get a rough understanding of the landscape? What can be the boundary between HR and chaplaincy? I bet the answer is it varies. what are some of the lines of division that you've seen? Tyson, but and maybe just what you know of the rest of the corporate chaplaincy landscape.
So chaplains have to be neutral. They can't carry the politics as much as the company might like them to do that. They'll lose their ability to be trusted agents by all of the employees if they begin to look like they're just another management person pushing a particular corporate agenda. Their ability to stay neutral is critical in this case, so that they can move in and out in that liminal way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and I think it makes a lot of sense that you brought up a military context, because we think about correctional facilities, military contexts, and corporate settings. It is not the job of a chaplain to perpetuate the system, but it to be liminal. And that takes a lot of gifts and introspective skills. And it does sound like I hear you saying that that's it. The systems thinking and understanding one's place and how power works is pretty key for educators to keep in mind.
Well, it is. And the other piece to this, I think, is if there's a course or a section or some way to weave this as a thread through the various courses, is the ability to assess whether or not the student can do critical thinking, second and third order effect thinking. Every leader in making decisions has to do a risk assessment. And I, as the chaplain, advisor about people things or things I see, or maybe you really don't want to do that now, or is there a different way of saying it? All of those things, if I'm a part of that leadership team and integrated into it, I have to be able to help my boss think through what are the second and third order effects. And then it's his or her decision what they're going to do. And my job then is to execute that decision. But I ought not to be silent and then go out and grumble about what did or didn't happen. Once I've said my piece,
triangulation, right?
Yes, absolutely. So having a good counseling background that helps you to understand, not getting triangulated, how to understand the system, how to be an advisor to the leadership on what you see within the system, and identifying sometimes who's the identified patient in the leadership team that always gets dumped on, right? It happens in the workplace just like it does in homes and in other relationships.
So, Karen, sort of in summary, what would be some top thoughts you have about those who are designing curriculum to train chaplains for corporate chaplaincy?
Okay. I think a good solid core in counseling, systems theory, and ethics, both religious ethics, business ethics, and even medical ethics for that matter. And here's why. As a cognitive behavioralist in the way I approach things, that paradigm of my beliefs and my behaviors, and then my barometer that kind of goes off when these two are out of sync, what I discover is ethics is studying how one reasons what's right and wrong. So that belief part connects very easily to the counseling paradigm, and then to this how we reason and think through things. Okay, so
beautifully said. Karen, thank you so much for your many years of service in multiple chaplaincy areas, and for sharing wisdom and time with us today. We really appreciate it.